everyone, my name is Emma and I wanted to share with you some tips that I find useful in being more productive when I'm working from home. I know lots more people are working from home because of the current situation. I know some of you, your job will have completely moved to home, other people maybe you're just working from home sometimes. Also, I know lots of my audience are writers and so you work from home all the time probably, like me. I have worked from home a lot over the past however many years. Before I was a writer, I was a teacher, and as a teacher, because for a lot of that time I had young children, I would make the choice of bringing all my work home. So once the school bell went, I would bring my marking and my planning and all that stuff home and do it here because I wanted to be able to spend time with my kids. So I would do that work in the evenings after they were in bed, or sometimes I had days of childcare, so when my children would be in nursery or at school, when I wasn't actually at work because I worked part-time a lot, so I would be doing that paperwork then. So I've kind of got used to being fairly disciplined about working from home. Also, before I officially stopped working as a teacher and started my career as a writer, I'd spent a number of years writing my first book, so I had been doing that intertwined with all my teaching stuff, so I'm really used to working from home and being as productive as possible. If you're new to this channel, it's probably useful for me to explain a bit of my typical working pattern. So I have 3 kids, and so childcare wise, I'm kind of always balancing work with school drop-offs and days when they're at nursery and, you know, all the stuff. So typically speaking, I work 3 to 4 days a week. At the moment, depending on the regulations that affect, because depending on whether other people can look after our kids, it changes a bit. Preferably I work 4 days a week, but it depends, and it depends if I work weekends or evenings, but the majority of that time is spent working from home. And the kind of things I do are writing, editing, filming videos, editing these videos. I am recording audio for some audiobooks at the moment. So, I mean, practically all of that has to happen here. So, in no particular order, here are my most useful tips. So my first tip is to set aside specific work time. Now, for me, this is easier because that's kind of just based around when I have childcare. But if, say, you don't have to specifically log into a work system to say that you are at work, you know, and your work is kind of nebulous, particularly if you don't have children, so you're not kind of working around supervising them. I appreciate that sometimes it's easy to keep pushing your work back, and that's what I did before I had kids. So I'd be like, oh, well, I'll do it later. I could just do it this evening, or I'll just do this thing first. So if you specifically set aside, this is my work time, it's easier to kind of go to work and for that to also be recognised as that set time. It's like, I am now going to my workplace, even though you're still in the same place, the same building. I find that just setting aside that time and saying, right, this is the work time, and I'm not going to push it to another time, I'm going to get my work done now, is really, really helpful. For me, because that time is so limited, that's even more helpful in motivating me. My second tip might be a little bit controversial, and it's to allow yourself headspace. Now, for me, I am not somebody who can just jump straight into my working day. When I was a teacher, I had a commute when I would be able to listen to the radio or think or whatever. And now that I work from home and I drop the kids off, I can't just come in and go. Maybe it's controversial to say, oh, give yourself a bit of time, but for me, it kind of gets me into work mode. And I think generally people do have some kind of commute to work, or some time where you've arrived at work and you're chatting to your colleagues about how your day was. So I think it's normal to have a little bit of a settling in period, which for me is making myself a coffee, bit of social media, just a little bit of time to kind of, I think for me as well, because the kids, it's chaotic in the morning with the kids, that it's almost just a moment of peace before I start working. And it's okay if you feel that you need that to get yourself into the working mindset. I think that's okay. But it leads me on to my next tip, which is be strict with yourself. You do have to recognise when you're procrastinating and when you're just needing a break or some space or whatever. You know, once you start cleaning your entire house to avoid doing a job, you maybe need to be harsh with yourself. You know, hold yourself accountable and be honest about whether you were as productive as you were able to be. And yeah, I think it's really important to hold yourself accountable to that. My next tip is to use a journal, diary, list making, whatever suits you. So I use a bullet journal. Now, it's not a super beautiful bullet journal, but the system works for me, and I'll link a video above about that. But basically, so as somebody who makes lists, in the past I would have like one ongoing list that would last me a week, and I find that a bit too stressful because it's like it gets longer and longer and it never ends until I just make a new list. Whereas bullet journaling means that I have daily lists and that I can schedule things, and that if something doesn't happen I can move it on to the next day. And I find that system really helpful. So however you do it, I suggest that you do start afresh each day. But for me, having a list of what I need to accomplish means that I can see, have I got far enough through that list? What do I actually need to do? Obviously, it's different if you've been set tasks by your boss, your work, but if you're doing something self-motivated, even if you have been set tasks by somebody else, just setting out what you need to do that day is so helpful. So I really recommend some kind of list making that works for you. My next tip is to set yourself deadlines. Again, these may be set for you if you're working for somebody, but particularly if you work on big projects like I do. So if I'm writing a whole book, then I need to set myself deadlines of when each bit will be complete. Or if I'm working on publishing a book, each aspect when that's going to be done by. So set yourself deadlines, write them down, and again, hold yourself accountable. I mean, if it's a self-set deadline and something gets in the way and you don't quite meet it, but it's going to be okay, you can kind of be forgiving of yourself. Don't be an awful boss to yourself. Don't like stress yourself out too much. But this is work. You do have to set yourself some kind of timeline and try your absolute best to stick to it. So yeah, set yourself deadlines and stick to them. My next tip is to work where you feel productive. Now, I work here. No, I work in my bedroom mostly because a lot of the chairs in our house do my back in. So I'm just comfortable sat up in bed. If I'm cold, I can pull the covers over me. The dog sometimes comes and sits next to me. I'm just comfortable and happy there. And I feel productive and I feel like that's my workspace. But I know for some people that working in their bedroom means that because that's a place of rest, it kind of psychologically doesn't work. My husband works in here, so this is our dining room. As long as the kids aren't here, if they are, then they would be interrupting him. So if the kids are at school, he will work in here. It's just where he's comfortable. However, sometimes it can be nice to break things up a bit. So if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen on my stories that sometimes I go and work in my husband's office. I'm really lucky that I can do that. And, you know, he doesn't work there every day. And that he has a space where he doesn't mind me. I'm not going to distract him if I'm working there. For me, it means that he's kind of looking over my shoulder. It helps. But also that I have to get dressed for work because we're going to an office. There is a tendency when you're working from home to just wear like loungewear. And there's something about like being well dressed and work ready that's just really nice. And also, when you do work from home, it can get quite lonely and quite boring. So breaking it up a bit, I find, is helpful. So as I say, I'm fortunate that I have that space where, childcare willing, sometimes we can go together. Otherwise, it depends if we have to pick the kids up, basically. But sometimes I can go there, and I like to go about once a week. But there are alternatives to achieve the same thing. So you could go and work in a coffee shop or something like that, so that you're just away from your usual working space. Or sometimes you could find someone that you work well with. Maybe you're in a similar line of work, so you can work in the same space and hold each other accountable, and just have a bit of kind of having a colleague there, just having it just does break up the mundanity of it, and bounce ideas off of somebody else. So there are ideas. Sometimes you can hire like a shared space, but if you find that you do get a bit bored, lethargic, fed up working on your own, breaking that up and thinking of other ways, just getting somewhere else, moving somewhere else, or working with other people can really help your productivity. So my next one is to remove distractions. Now, I'm not too bad with this one, but if you find that on your laptop or your computer, maybe you have social media notifications popping up, or maybe your phone is pinging all the time and that distracts you, then think about logging out of those social medias. Sorry if you can hear my kids upstairs. See, distractions, kids at home. See if you can log out of those, turn your Wi-Fi off maybe if you don't need it for your work. Personally, I only really find it a distraction if there's a group chat going on and my phone is constantly going. So in that situation, I tend to just put my phone on silent and close any tabs of social media that I've got open. But if you find that distracting, then, try to close those things, be strict with yourself. Another thing is if you find you're distracted by stuff within the house. So for me, it will be if the kids are around and they're being loud or whatever. But my husband and I have got quite good at keeping the kids away from each other. And for instance, if I need to do something quiet in the house, my husband can give me like an hour of time to take the kids out for a walk or something, and vice versa. So if you need, say you live in a house share and you need your housemates to be quiet, removing those distractions is also important if you can. Sometimes people aren't cooperative. My next tip is to create accountability. So I do this by telling my husband when he gets in what I've done. He's not all that interested, but he appreciates that me saying I did this is part of me kind of using him as my accountability. And if I say to him, I don't want to have to say to him, oh, I didn't really do anything today, or I found it really hard to get anything done, so I know that I'm going to be talking to him about it. But you can do things like, let's say there's a friend or a relative that you speak to every day or on a regular basis. You can say, please ask me what I've been doing. You can also use social media. So one thing that I've done sometimes is put a to-do list on my Instagram stories, because then I feel like I've told people what I'm going to do, so I have to do it. But anything, even if you've got a newsletter or something like that and you can say, this is what I'm doing this month, then when you come to write your next one, if you haven't done it, it's a bit, so kind of anything you can do where you're telling somebody else, put it on social media, talk to someone face to face to say, this is what I'm going to be doing, and then be able to report back and say, I've done it. That, if you know that person knows what you're supposed to be doing, that does help you to be more productive, because you kind of have somebody to answer to. Obviously, if you work for somebody, then that's different because you have to be accountable to them. My next one is a bit controversial. So some people say to do the hard task first. They call it eating the frog. I Disagree. I like to be able to tick off a few things in my to-do list first to feel like I've been productive. I also find I have to ease myself in a little bit. So what I do is I do easy admin tasks first. So I do emails, banking, social media, like if I've got to reply to comments, I do those things first because they're easy, but I am working. It's like I am now doing the work thing. So I find it an easy way to like ease myself into the groove. And then I will generally choose, not necessarily the easiest job, but a job I like first. Again, just to feel like I've got started, I've been productive. Then I will do the hard task. So maybe something that's part of a big project that I feel quite intimidated by. Maybe it's a horrible phone call I don't want to make, or something that's been worrying me, or do you know what I mean? Those kind of jobs that you tend to put off, or just a really big task that I need to get my teeth into. So for me, I do easy things, tick a few things off, and then into the hard stuff. But if you're somebody who will procrastinate about that big job and need to just get it done, then I do suggest eat the frog, do the hardest thing first. It depends. You kind of have to know yourself on this one. Next up, I would say you need to create a routine. This is something I think that kind of falls into place. For me, it certainly has. So my typical routine, like I've said, on a work day, I come in, I have a cup of coffee, social media, then I'll do a few easy admin tasks, then I'll do a job I like, and then I'll get into a hard job or a bigger job, and then just work through my to-do list that's in my planner, basically. I also kind of have a typical weekly flow. So on a Tuesday, I tend to film. It's Tuesday today. I tend to edit on a Thursday. Wednesday is a bit of I don't always get a Wednesday. So Wednesday I see as a bonus. Writing I will do in the afternoons on those days. So that's like my meatier task I need to get into. So filming I find easy, editing I find easy. So those are my morning things. Then on a Friday, I do tend to do writing related stuff all day. But again, I will do the more enjoyable parts first and then get on to the bigger projects. So that's just me, and I've found that rhythm and it works, and I know, oh, it's Tuesday today, so I need to do these things. But I find that kind of daily routine and weekly routine does start to just sort of happen, and I am a real creature of habit. So what I find then is that I'm like, oh, well, it's Tuesday, filming. Whereas if I just filmed on, I don't know, any day in the week, then I would be a bit all over the place. So I do suggest, if you can, creating some kind of routine. You do particular jobs at particular times and on particular days. It does help, especially if you are a routine person like I am. Next is to set boundaries with other people. So this only really applies if you live with other people, but it can be quite hard sometimes when you're working from home to respect each other's privacy, work time, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And this is something my husband and I think we've perfected now. It's taken us years of both working from home. And essentially for us, if you don't want to be disturbed, close the door. And that's how it works. So if we're in that zone, either one of us will work upstairs in the bedroom, close the door. We don't want to be disturbed. We don't want to be offered a coffee. We don't want the other person to pop in and say, you all right, need anything, what you up to? We don't want to talk. If we're feeling sociable, then we will maybe even work in the same room, or we'll leave the door open. Just kind of that signals. Because, so sometimes one or other of us will be working alone in the house. Sometimes we're both here. Sometimes we're both here and the kids are here, so only one of us is working. And in that respect, sometimes one of us is working but is willing to jump in if we need help with the kids. But other times it's like, nope, I'm not here, and then it's door closed. So that works for us. Sometimes it can take time to set those boundaries and for the other person to understand them. And in all honesty, with us, I was the other person that didn't get it when my husband worked from home. Even though I also worked from home, I just wasn't very good at keeping away from him. So I just think sometimes it takes time, it takes a lot of communication, and maybe setting up some signals or particular times. Do not disturb me between this time and that time, or you can disturb me but only to offer me food. Whatever it is, just figure it out with your other people you live with. The kids know if the door's closed, don't bother me. And right now, I've said to them, I need to finish filming this video. Can you just pop upstairs and play for 10 minutes, but I'm here if you need me. And I can hear them, they're right over my head playing. So, you know, they know that boundary of, I just need to do something, give me a moment. But I am actually still available if you need me, if you see what I mean. But if I wasn't available, well, I can only do that if there's someone else in the house. But if I wasn't available, it would be doors closed, go somewhere else, I'm not here. It's a tricky one, but I do think you need to establish those boundaries to be able to work productively without people coming in every 5 minutes to ask you for a snack or talk to you or whatever. So yeah, set yourself some boundaries. And then finally, I would say that you need to value your own work. Again, this is maybe more because of the nature of the work that I do. But it's very easy for me as somebody who sets their own work, sets their own projects, comes up with their own thing, and who runs a small business and effectively still like a business in its quite early phases. It's easy for me to be quite dismissive and say, oh, well, it's not important, or, oh yeah, if you need me to do that thing, I'll drop work. But actually my work has value and deserves time, and I am deserving of being able to remove myself and say, I need to do some work now. That's easier when it's work that's set by a workplace, when you work for somebody. When you work for yourself, and also for me, because my business, like I said, is still starting out, it's still not really financially viable for our household. You know, we rely on my husband's income. So it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, my work isn't important, but actually it is important. So if you have that feeling of inadequacy or just not valuing the work that you do, then I would say that by placing value on it and giving it a time and a place and an importance, that helps you to be productive, because you're in that workspace and therefore you are doing work and you value that work. And then when you're not, you're not. It's hard to explain, but if, like me, you do struggle a little bit with that, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Saying to yourself, no, it does matter. You know, I'm a small business owner and what I do is important to me and to us as a family, and I'm proud of it. So therefore, I deserve to be able to work productively, be able to have that space. And, you know, as I say, that comes from me. That's not other people putting that on me. That's my own feeling. So make sure that you do value the work that you're doing from home. If you don't, you should. So I hope that you find those tips useful in being productive. It's not easy to be productive when you work from home because there's lots of distractions. There's snacks, there's household chores, there's other people. You know, it's not easy. It's also pretty monotonous and you don't have other people to talk to unless you do and they're distracting you. So it's tricky, but I think that with both of us in our household working from home, we've learned to create kind of a culture of it. And you definitely can create routines and practices, I suppose, that increase your productivity and help you to work as much as you can and enjoy it as much as possible. So, as I say, I hope you found that helpful. If you have, hit the like button. Please do comment below if you have any tips you'd like to add about towards being productive when you're working from home. Do you work from home? Do you find it really easy? Do you find it hard to concentrate? What are your best ways, your best methods of getting things done? Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon for another video. Take care.